You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Grown-ups, if there's a child in your life who is interested in, curious about, or fascinated by people and places from history, then my podcast, The Past and the Curious, might just be a hit in your home. From the invention of microscopes to world-traveling dogs to fashions of the 1890s, gold rush ghost towns, and audiences going wild for walking competitions, we've got a little bit of it all. Hosted by children's author and museum educator Mick Sullivan, that's me, the show is fun, funny, engaging, honest, and beloved by kids and parents alike. Find The Past and the Curious at all the usual podcast places.
Have you ever wondered how inbred the Habsburgs really were? What women in the past used for birth control? Or what Queen Victoria's 9 children got up to? On the History Tea Time podcast, I profile remarkable queens and LGBTQ+ royals, explore royal family trees, and delve into women's medical history and other fascinating topics. Join me every Tuesday for History Tea Time, wherever fine podcasts are enjoyed.
Fall of Rome, and yet more orgasms.
I'm Genn McMenemy.
And I'm Jenny Williamson.
And this is Ancient History Fangirl. The one of us is the debut novelist edition, and it's not the speaker.
Oh my God, I am freaking out. It is me. Hi.
So I have been waiting to do this interview for so long, like decades I've been waiting to do this. Ever since the first time I met Jenny when I was a freshman in college and she was a year above me. And she was reading some of her fiction to our critique class. And I was like, wow, she is gonna be a famous writer.
Oh, thanks, Jen.
I am so thrilled and excited to welcome my co-host, Jenny Williamson, to the podcast, not as a co-host, but as an author. We're going to discuss her non-broadcast career as a historical romantasy novelist. Her debut novel, Enemy of My Dreams, is out in bookshops on February 4th, 2025, and is coming out from Harlequin. Jenny, welcome. I promise I will not let our resident poltergeist, Julius Caesar, hijack this conversation.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so glad to be here.
You should be, because I have really hard-hitting questions for you.
I'm a little nervous.
So, Jenny, let's start at the very beginning. Your novel, Enemy of My Dreams, is a historical romantasy. What drew you to the genre of historical romantasy?
Okay, so these are 3 genres in one, right? I've always been a huge romance fan. I know I've talked about this with other authors that we've had on for the book club. I have loved romance since I read the very first romance I ever read, which I was maybe 14. But anyway, okay, so I've always loved romance. I've always loved fantasy ever since my dad gave me my first copy of Lord of the Rings for Christmas when I was 11. I just devoured that book and became an absolute obsessive fantasy fan for a while. I've always loved historical. My parents were the kind of people who camped out on Civil War battlefields for their honeymoon. They've always both been super passionate about history and really encouraged that in me. My mom was the town librarian, and there were all kinds of books in all 3 genres that I could just dive into, and I was a voracious reader. And I think combining the 3 is really just, that's where I want to live, that's where I want to stay. And maybe I'll write books that go in more in one direction than the other, but I think they'll always have aspects of all 3.
So, Jenny, let's talk about your hero, Alaric of the Visigoths. We know he's infinitely quotable. Fans of the podcast know that Jenny loves to quote him at the drop of a hat. What made you decide that this Gothic warlord was the things that romance heroes are made of?
So a good friend of mine is a Latin linguist and taught Latin in schools for a long time. And one time she was telling me about Alaric of the Visigoths, and she wrote down a quote from him, which was, it's actually funny because I think that the way the Latin was is it's kind of a tongue twister or a palindrome. So it was like one of those sort of Latin tongue twisters, but actually also I think is what this person actually said, or it was written down somewhere that this is what he said. And it's something like, I grind you down with my bare hands, Romans, lay down your weapons and hide, or something like that. So that was my introduction to Alaric, and I was just so fascinated with him, and I dug deeper into his story, and he was a rebel leader who fought Rome. He was the guy who sacked Rome in 410 AD, and a really complicated historical figure in a fascinating time. And I just fell in love with that time period in history. And I think that, Alaric as he was and Alaric as I wrote him are quite different people. I really did play very fast and loose with the history.
Are you telling me that he doesn't have a giant mustache, as would have been the actual favored facial hairstyle at this period in time?
Well, it's kind of hard to say if he actually did have a mustache.
He had a mustache.
Genn is very fixated on this. He could have, because barbarian fashion...
It was mustache forward, as they say.
He might have had a mustache. We don't know. No idea, really. In my book, he doesn't.
I support that. I'm not a fan of being mustache forward, or at least that type of mustache, which would have been quite a long mustache.
It would have been one of those big handlebar mustaches. I didn't write him that way.
So, let me get this straight. You chose Alaric of the Visigoths because he was kind of a dangerous rebel who maybe had an axe to grind against the Romans. I mean, who didn't? And was quite adept at sacking cities and striking fear into the hearts of his enemies, correct?
Sexy, yes. Uh-huh.
All right, Jenny, I'm going to give you a question that I remember editors giving authors all the time when they came into the office. And that was, what is your elevator pitch for this book? And listeners, if you don't know what an elevator pitch is, it means if you're in an elevator and you only have a few seconds to get someone's time, like between when the door closes and it goes to the ground floor, what would you tell them? Like, how would you grab their attention? What's the hook of your book?
Fall of Rome. And yet more orgasms.
Gotta do better.
That's all I've got.
Okay, Jenny is she's very red, so I'm going to give her her own elevator pitch because I know it. It's the fall of Rome. A rebel princess who wants to escape her tyrannical brother seeks an alliance with a dangerous Gothic warlord. What starts as bitter rivals turns to a love that will ignite the Roman Empire and maybe see it end in flames. So that is her elevator pitch.
Hot. Yes. Good job, Genn. Yeah, you should follow me around and just say that to people.
Almost like I worked in marketing and still do for a very long time.
It's really hard to do it when it's your own book. Just you wait, Genn. Actually, a friend of mine is a literary agent, and she's not my literary agent. She's just a friend of mine who does this for other people. And she was trying to do this for one of her authors and trying to get the author to do it, or asking the author what they thought about, like, what is their description of their book or their elevator pitch. And the author was like, I don't know. Like, so many of us get that deer in headlights feeling when asked this. And I was trying to explain why this is hard for people. I would have had a few drinks and I was like, you know what? It's like looking at your own ass. Like, it's really hard to do. Even if you can do it for other people, it's hard to do for your own book.
I don't think it's like looking at your own ass. I have to disagree with you because, number one, if the mirror angles are right, you can see that baby.
It takes some contortion.
Sure. But I think why so many people, and as a writer, I also get this as well. I think what happens is you're trying to synthesize everything about your book that you think the book is about, as opposed to thinking from a different perspective, from a marketer or copywriter's perspective, which is like, what are the 3 things that I need to tell a reader that's going to get them to go, yes, I want this. So I think a lot of writers are incredibly good at building worlds and telling stories, but then when they have to synthesize it and really figure out what the selling points are, it's not always the easiest thing to do. It's why not every marketer is an author, and not every author is a marketer. Some are, some aren't.
Start your day with Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal. The instant oatmeal ready to help you tackle whatever your day brings. Like wrangling your toddler into their car seat. That was fun. Coaching your 6th graders soccer team. Go girls! And carrying all the groceries in one trip. Whew. Try Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal, granola, and bars. Great taste and a good source of protein. Quaker, bring out the good.
Baseball is back, and the first pitch is on Netflix. The New York Yankees, led by 7-time All-Star Aaron Judge, head to the San Francisco Bay to take on Rafael Devers' San Francisco Giants. This season kicks off with one exclusive opening night game. Watch MLB Opening Night, the New York Yankees versus the San Francisco Giants, live on Netflix. Wednesday, March 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
No one hates history, they just haven't found the right teacher yet. Or in this case, a nerdy best friend who loves to tell you all about world history, women's history, and weird history. Hi, I'm TK, the creator of For the Love of History podcast, a place for people who want to learn more but don't know where to start, and history lovers who want to break from the mainstream. From rat trials to warrior women, we cover topics from every country and era. Whether you're a history expert or just starting out, there's a place for you here in the Time Machine. So join me every Friday on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube for a brand new topic. See you there. Bye.
So, Julia is one of my all-time favorite characters in literature, and I can say that now because it's going to be published. I see a lot of myself in her. She kind of has two modes when dealing with a crisis, and they are both my modes, which are maybe overindulge in the wine or take a nap.
Drinking and napping, yes.
She is also the mistress of many a harebrained plan, which somehow work out. She's very resourceful. She's also a spicy ginger. I have to set the record straight, Jenny. Is she based on me?
Not really.
What made you decide to make the heroine of your novel a lovable, flawed Roman princess?
Well, I think that with Julia is not a historical character. She's not real. I made her up. The real Alaric allegedly did have a wife, but we don't know much about her except that she really liked jewelry, apparently. So the inspirations that I took for Julia, there are kind of three in history. One is Julia Augusta, who is the daughter of Augustus, and she was kind of a playgirl. She'd partied a lot. She had a lot of lovers. She openly defied her father, who had implemented these chastity laws to try and make Rome great again, basically. Like, he wanted to bring back what he saw as this mythic past of Rome that was all moral and upstanding, and the women weren't so slutty.
Clearly, I never heard of the cult of Dionysus, but what can I tell you, Augustus?
Well, yeah, specifically, though, it was about women and cracking down on women. And then his own daughter was like, well, screw you, Dad. And she's like having sex in the temples, allegedly. She wound up getting exiled by her dad because she would not stop with the illicit affairs. And I was just so into this character, and I was just like kind of based my Julia on her. But also on two other people, because that Julia was hundreds of years prior, right at the very beginning of the empire, and my Julia existed at the end of the empire. And there are two figures from the end of the empire that I also kind of brought in. One is Galla Placidia, who we talk about in I think one of our very early episodes on Alaric and his time period. It was about her and Ataulf. And she was a Roman princess who had like a spine of steel. She was kidnapped by Ataulf. There's a question about if this was consensual or not.
Who was Ataulf?
Oh, he was like Alaric's brother-in-law and right-hand guy.
So he was now king of the Goths when this happened?
I don't think so. I think it happened when they sacked Rome. Yeah, she really lived through a lot of different things because Ataulf, in the history, not in my book, Ataulf gets assassinated a few years after the sack of Rome. She winds up going back to the Romans. She winds up marrying this general that she absolutely loathed. He becomes emperor. He dies shortly afterwards. She rules for decades and does a great job. And I was like, I could see the queenliness of my Julia, like her really coming into her own in that character. And then there's also Honoria, who I believe was Galla Placidia's daughter, who also didn't want to marry whoever she was engaged to, and sent a letter to Attila the Hun to come and rescue her from this marriage. And I think that was kind of the genesis of this idea for me. But then I just kind of got really into Alaric. But yeah, like, she sent a message to Attila the Hun to come and get her. She wanted him to be her bridegroom, and Attila the Hun, on this pretext, invaded Rome and attacked it. I don't believe that he and Honoria ever met, but I think she was just really, really desperate to get out of this situation that she was in. So I kind of combined these three characters, you know, like the wild and defiant and rebellious Julia who refused to be this upstanding Roman lady, and the queenly Galla Placidia, who just lived through a lot of things and had been a Gothic queen and a Roman empress. And also Honoria, who really was just desperate to get out of this situation and would have done absolutely anything to rescue herself. I kind of melded them all into one character and added a dash of me circa 2015, running around Bushwick, drinking in all the bars, all of that. Like, I really wanted Julia to be quite fallible and was not that concerned with her likability, I suppose you could say. Like, I wanted her to be flawed, but fun.
She is, when you all get a chance to read this book, she's very flawed. She's filled with joy. She's got a real emotional heart that keeps you turning pages. And I think Jenny does such a good job of letting us understand her situation, because her situation, as I remember it, is that she is going to be forced into an arranged marriage with a man that she loathes. And she decides that there's only one way that she's going to get out of this marriage, and that is with an army at her back. I mean, what a boss.
Alaric's army. I'm not going to give you any spoilers on that, but hijinks ensue, shall we say. These two were made for each other, but they don't see it that way quite in the beginning, and I love that.
I love a good enemies to lovers. So, Enemy of My Dreams is set during the fall of Rome. What was Rome like at this time? We've covered it very long ago, and not with anywhere near the amount of depth that we've covered like the early Empire or the late Republic. What was it like setting a book during this time period? What would life have been like for a Roman princess like Julia or a Gothic warlord like Alaric?
Those are both such big questions that I'm still trying to get my hands around. So it was a really upheaval-y time. Like, the Roman Empire had grown very large. It had been split into East and West. So there was an empire in the East. At this point, it was this guy Arcadius, who would have been my Julia's older brother. There was Honorius in the West, who was a child emperor. I mean, when Alaric was doing what he was doing in his empire, he was like a teenager and freaking terrified. Like, he must have been just absolutely terrified all the time. He was hiding in Ravenna, in this city that was in a marsh, really hiding from this terrifying Gothic warlord rampaging around Italy, which he did 3 times. Alaric invaded Italy 3 times. My book starts like right before his last invasion. There would have been so much violence. Like, if you're just an ordinary person kind of living on a farm or something out in the countryside, like, this would have been a really scary time. There would have been these armies coming through. Cities were not much protection, because when Alaric came through, like, the 3rd time, he sacked a lot of cities coming down to Rome. There was a lot of religious upheaval. The empire had been made officially Christian by Theodosius' time. Theodosius was Honorius and Julia's dad. For a few generations beforehand, emperors had come and gone, making Christianity either a crime or making pagan religion a crime. And there were various penalties for being visibly part of the wrong religion. It was like a scary time to be anything, because one month your religion could be the one that is sanctioned by the empire, and then the next month it could be like, on pain of death, you can't be this religion anymore. So there was a lot of upheaval and a lot of instability on every level. And my 2 POV characters, for the most part, are both high-ranking characters. I have Julia, who is a Roman princess, and I have Alaric, who is basically king of the Goths. I did try to show and talk about how things would have been for just kind of normal people too, as much as I could. And I think that's going to come up more in book 2. But it would have been like a really difficult time. And this was also called the Migration Era. I'm sorry, I'm going to just go off here. And it was called that because in what would have been Eastern Europe now, like the kind of eastern area of the empire, there was a lot of upheaval there too, because the Huns were coming in and displacing other tribes of people in this area and kind of throwing them up against the borders of Rome. So there were all these refugees coming in. We don't know much about Alaric's childhood and early experiences, but one of the things that happens in my book is that his family was displaced by Hunnic invaders, and he winds up in this refugee camp that was just kind of a death trap, basically, which is something that really did happen, and it happened around where he grew up, around when he would have been a kid. So I thought it was kind of a good place to start in terms of creating that character and why he had so much anger towards the Roman Empire and his experiences. There was so much upheaval on every level for so many groups of people in so many different directions. It's just like everywhere you look, things are on fire. So it's a fun place to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, one of the things that I didn't exactly know ahead of time and that I really fell in love with when I was reading your book was the fact that Alaric was actually much like my dear love Spartacus. He started out his life in the Roman army. Can you tell us what it was like, or what it would have been like for him training with the Roman army, the sort of battles he would have fought in, and what might have made him want to turn against the empire?
Yeah, so Alaric, the historical Alaric versus my Alaric, right? There are two different ones. Which one do you want?
I want your Alaric, but obviously he has roots in the historical.
Yeah, so my Alaric fairly early winds up being a federati leader, but under this general called Stilicho, who is like the head general of the whole Roman army. The federati were like tribal groups within the Roman army that they brought in that weren't necessarily considered part of the Roman army proper. Like, they didn't get the same training. They didn't have the same core of like engineers and stuff. They weren't in the same hierarchy. They were allowed to fight under their own tribal laws and with their own hierarchies and people that they followed, but they were under the control of a Roman general. And that was the case with Alaric. But Alaric was really looking in history. Alaric was really looking to rise in the Roman hierarchy. And part of his rebellion had to do with having like his ambitions closed off to him because of xenophobia and bias, basically. But my Alaric, and this is also true of historical Alaric, like the history and my Alaric kind of like meld in this place. There was this battle called Frigidus, the Battle of the Frigidus River. We're not sure exactly what river that is because it's not necessarily linked to a river we know about today, although there are some theories about which one it was, but it was somewhere in the Julian Alps. So Alaric was fighting on the Roman side as a federati leader, and they basically used his people as cannon fodder. And he was sent into battle, and like half his troops died. And the way that it works out in the book, and I think this pretty much tracks to the history, is that the feeling was that there's like 20,000 federati troops that are loyal to Alaric, and the emperor is afraid that they're going to rebel next. He has their loyalty, and that scares them. And he's also a quote-unquote barbarian, just like this guy who rebelled. I mean, the question about what is a barbarian versus not a barbarian is kind of a complicated question at this period because a lot of people had been folded into the Roman Empire and considered themselves citizens, or maybe didn't have full citizenship rights, but they were part of the Roman Empire. So that is also a question that applies to the situation that's going on here. But basically, Alaric gets sent into this battle. Half his people die in the battle, and he is furious. And in my book, that's when he turns.
Yeah, and I will say this, both Jenny's Alaric and the real Alaric of the Visigoths have a certain magnetism, a certain dashing cult leaderness to them that I think comes through quite well, and that is why the Romans feared him. You know, he was able to unite disparate people from different Gothic tribes and keep them together for a long time.
Hello everyone, Stakuyi here.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the hosts of History of Everything, a podcast which you can probably guess by the name is, well, I mean, it's about everything. Do you want to know why people thought potatoes were evil and would give you syphilis? Are you curious about all the stories of the terrible and stupid ways that people have kicked the bucket over the years? Do you want to hear tales about all of the different badasses of history and the lives that they had brought to life? Well, if so, then look no further. History of Everything is just the right podcast for you. It's available on Spotify, Pandora, and anywhere else that you get your podcast from. Join us for some fun and just see how weird and wacky history can be.
So, let's talk a little bit about the Gothic people. There was a lot of displacement going on during this period of the Gothic people. What do we know about them, and how much history and culture did you use in your novel?
So we know some things. These were Germanic people. I guess they were from an area of what is modern-day Germany, parts of Eastern Europe, broad swaths of that area. If you want like a simple thumbnail version, you could map this to the Vikings. Culturally similar to, and perhaps precursors of, the Vikings. There's this old story in this book by this ancient world historian named Jordanes about how the Goths came from this place called Skansa, which is sometimes mapped to Scandinavia. We don't know a huge amount about them that isn't from outside sources. Like, we get some stuff from Tacitus, we get some stuff from various other Roman writers who encountered them, who may or may not be accurate. For example, Tacitus has a real axe to grind about how corrupt the Romans were. His own people were in his time, and so he describes the Germanic people as being very pure, and they only have sex when married. But there's also a lot of barbarian fan fiction about how they can deal with extreme heat and cold, and they're very, very large, and they do not fear death, and things like that. Potentially there were berserkers among them. You can listen to the Berserkers episode about that. We do know a few things about their relationships with women. Apparently women were better treated or had more power than in Roman times, at least. There were some interesting seeress characters that had a lot of influence and that appear in Roman sources. So we know some stuff, and this would be, I think, something that I could tell you more details on in a deeper dive, for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe as we get closer to your book coming out, I'd love to see that deeper dive. I'd also love to maybe interrogate those sources a little bit, because seeresses and seers amongst them feels very Spartacus to me, feels very Celtic and Gallic. Like, I'm really interested in how the Romans, who were incredibly superstitious, then othered the people like the Goths or the Celts or the Thracians with this sort of like idea of women in power and seers.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the conversation. Yeah.
Enemy of My Dreams has just the most incredible cast of characters. And we don't have time to talk about all of them, but could you tell me like a few that you're really excited for our listeners and your future readers to meet?
Who do you want to hear about, Genn?
Okay, I'm going to tell you all who my favorite is that I can't wait for you all to meet. His name is Thorismund. He is like 6'5". He is beautiful. I want to climb that man like a tree.
Thorismund is actually, I feel like the constellation of Alaric's friends that are around him kind of capture parts of him. Thorismund is sort of the part of Alaric that wants to bring back what was lost no matter the cost. He is this last remnant of this ancient culture. He carries around, so much grief around that. He's very traditional. He's very attached to the old ways, and he wants to bring that back, And sometimes that wanting to bring things back just as they were isn't possible, and he and Alaric clash in that way. But he's just possibly the most resistant to Julia, because when Julia and Alaric actually start admitting to themselves that they like each other, Thorismund is not cool with it, because he's just she's the worst possible person you could possibly date. Come on, a Roman, don't you remember what her people did to our people?
And she's not just a Roman. She is the daughter of their sworn enemy, the Emperor Theodosius. And Theodosius was the one who made the call to send Alaric and his people into the Battle of Frigidus. She's, if you were going to really hate someone based on the crimes that their people did, Julia would be high up on that list.
Absolutely. And, winning over Thorismund is a big step for her, and winning over Alaric.
I'm going to give you three more characters. Two kind of go together, and one is on her own. The first two are Hengist and Horsa. They are these twins who Alaric becomes kind of a surrogate father to them. Could you tell us a little bit about my favorite little chaos monkeys?
Okay, so Hengist and Horsa are actually named after two people who did exist in history, but a bit later, who I believe they were part of the Anglo-Saxon invasion of Britain. I think I was driving somewhere and I was listening to music and thinking about my book, and I just had this imaginative spree about who these twins were and who they were to Alaric. So they are about 15 when the book starts, and they are kind of surrogate sons to Alaric. Their dad dies and he winds up raising them, and it becomes personal to him to get a homeland for these boys that he loves, but also all the other children of people who died in his army who follow him because they have nowhere else to be. And Horsa and Hengist kind of become sort of representatives of that, but they are also absolutely stone cold child soldiers. They have been raised in an army. They've been fighting since they were 12. They are absolutely terrifying, but they're also just kids, So I really wanted Julia to have a relationship with them and just have people that she could be friends with. And they play Latrones, which is this board game that Julia also plays that she learned from her dad. She's very intimidated by these terrifying child soldiers, but they play this game that she plays, and they learned from Alaric, and they got good at it, genius level good at it in the trenches and at the siege of Milan and things like that, just stripping everybody of their money playing this game. And Julia's oh, let me at them. So this is kind of something I used as an engine for the plot, and Julia kind of making inroads into this new group of people that she found herself with that she had to make alliances with. And they're obviously very attached to Alaric, but there's a lot of fraughtness there that is going to be part of the plot. You'll see.
Yeah, and they're also a great foil for Julia's brother, who's around the same age.
He's like 17 in this book. I believe he would have been maybe 16 in the history. I mean, depending on where we're talking about. But yeah.
Yeah, around the same age as these twins. And it is a real great juxtaposition of how these boys have grown up versus Julia's brother, who is a child emperor. And we all know what happened to child emperors, although Honorius is the one who does buck the trend in history.
Yeah, I would say Honorius is definitely kind of an exception to the child emperor rule.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And my final character, she is a woman named Briska, and she has a lot of agency and controls a mountain pass. Do you want to tell us a little bit about her and sort of what the role of sort of Gothic women as leaders would have been within their community?
Briska isn't Gothic. She's more Celtic. There were Celtic communities living in the Alps, in ancient Roman times. So I was kind of basing this community on that. But I also just kind of crafted it into my own thing. And I was thinking about women rulers in general and what we've learned in the podcast about the pressures a woman ruler would be under specifically to marry. This is something we see a lot. Like, women rulers had to be twice as tough, twice as savvy, twice as smart to hold on to what they had. And when Alaric comes through this pass with Julia, Briska is somebody that he's known before, and he needs her to be on his side for various tactical reasons. And Briska also has needs, right? Because she's in a precarious position. Like, her kin are trying to get her to marry, and she does not want to do that. Interesting things ensue, and I think I like Briska as a character because she's somebody that Julia looks up to as a woman ruler, which is something that Julia really aspires to, and that is outside of the Roman cultural idea of women, because it was a really misogynist society. I mean, there were definitely women rulers. Galla Placidia becomes one, but it isn't as common, and women were not allowed in the Senate House. Women were allowed to have positions of power overtly in a lot of ways. So Briska being just like out there as an overt ruler who doesn't want to have a man beside her, doesn't want to just be a stand-in ruler for a son, doesn't want to have a consort, like that I think is impressive to Julia, and she looks up to that.
Yeah, that's one of the many reasons that I love Briska. For the other reasons, you're just going to have to read the book. I've got a very important question that I think our listeners would be upset if I didn't ask. We all know of your deep and abiding love of horses, Jenny. Is there a special horse character in this novel?
Alaric has a horse named Hannibal, who is very fearsome, but also Julia makes friends with. And I had so many Hannibal scenes that I had to cut, like so many scenes of her learning how to pet a horse and feed it an apple, and Alaric teaching her things, and other characters teaching her things about horses that I just couldn't keep, But like, there's this horse named Hannibal, and he's like a big, giant warhorse with dinner plate-sized hooves who crushes enemy skulls beneath his feet. And he's also kind of snuggly, but mostly with Julia or Alaric, because he knows where his scritch spots are. One of the characters that Genn did not ask about, but who's a super fun character, is a Hunnic mercenary. He plays a big role in this book as well. And they, of course, as we all know, had fierce little ponies. So there's a fierce little pony in this as well. And that's really fun. One of the things about writing about ancient history is that horrible things happen to animals. And I really entered into this thinking, I'm not going to have any horses die in my book at all. So no horses get hurt. I'm just putting that out there for anybody who needs to know this. Going in, there will be no horses that get hurt or killed in this book. I realize that's quite ahistorical, but I'm the author. I'm the god of this little world. I get to pick who dies, and no horses get hurt.
I knew she'd want to talk about the horses. And yes, I deliberately did not want to talk about Riga because it's a little spoilery, and also he's amazing and you need to read about him. So, what tropes are featured in Enemy of My Dreams? This is what we ask all of our romance authors. Tell me, do we have some grumpy sunshine? Do we have Forced proximity. Do we have two people, one bed? I mean, I know we have enemies to lovers. What other tropes did you play with?
We definitely have enemies to lovers. It's in the title. And I would say that it's like we were talking about this with one of our authors. I think it was Angela Ford. It's what she would deem probably, I would assume, a true enemies to lovers, which is like where there's a real reason that they would be enemies, I believe, as opposed to just circumstances. And Alaric and Julia both come from centuries and centuries of history of oppression and violence on two different sides, and they do not like each other, and they have good reasons for that. Both of them fight it. I would say Alaric fights it super hard, although I think he falls first.
I think he falls first. I've read this book. He definitely falls first.
So he falls first. Only one horse.
Only one horse. Forced proximity. There's a lot of forced proximity.
I wouldn't say Grumpy Sunshine. You would think, kind of listening to the description of this, that this is a Grumpy Sunshine book, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't see Julia as a sunshiny character. I think she's fun, but I don't think she's necessarily sunshiny.
No, I don't think she's sunshine. She's not like a optimistic, sunshiny person. And she's definitely not a manic pixie dream girl. Not that Grumpy Sunshine is necessarily that. Julia is she's her own thing. And I would say Alaric is quite surly.
He's not grumpy, though. I mean, he has, like, pretty upbeat, especially when he's killing people. It's a dark romance, kind of.
I repeat, he's very surly, but he's very engaging and attractive. But I wouldn't call him grumpy.
I would say intense and smoldery.
Describe Enemy of My Dreams in 10 words, Jenny.
I don't know.
It's only 10 words. You can do this. Sexy, smoldering, enemies to lovers.
Okay, well, it's a really sexy read. It's a romp through the smoking, ruined battlefield of the migration era. It's a boozy princess teaming up with a brutal gothic warlord to burn the empire to the ground. And I love it. Definitely more than 10 words, but I gave it a shot.
You did, and I'm very happy. And I want you to get used to that. Might be a question that people ask a lot.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate you helping me prep.
It's my job. So, Jenny, I have loved talking about your novel. I've loved reading it in different iterations, and I really know our listeners and your future readers out there are going to love it as well. Where can our listeners and people who want to buy your book find Enemy of My Dreams?
You can find the book wherever books are sold.
Will it be available in ebook, audio, hardcover?
At this point, it's in hardcover, and I'm assuming ebook. I don't know if there's going to be an audiobook as of this recording. I think you can pre-order it wherever books are sold, and pre-orders really help the success of the book. I would be delighted if you wanted to pre-order it. You can find that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you can find books. You could probably go to your bookstore and local bookstore and ask them to pre-order it for you. I'm not sure.
Or your local library, they can do that as well. And just like Women of Myth, we'll have a link tree that you can link to.
It comes out as of this recording on February 4th, 2025. I'm excited, nervous. It feels like the pinnacle of everything I've ever prepared to do in my life. And, no big, it's fine.
Where can our listeners find you?
I have a website, JennyWilliamsonAuthor.com. I have a newsletter. At some point, I will probably send things out to people. I have not gotten myself together to do that yet, but my ambition is to send people outtake scenes and extra content and things. Any news, you would theoretically find that out first. I have an Instagram account, Jenny freaking Williamson. All the socials, you probably, if you listen to Fangirl, can find me through that.
Thank you so much for joining us. Not as my esteemed co-host, but as an author. It has been a delight and a pleasure to talk to you about your book. I am so looking forward to holding a copy of it in my hands. It has been 8 years in the making, and every iteration of it has been just stunning. Listeners, we will be back next week or the week after. I'm not sure when this is going to drop. And you can find us on all the usual spots. We are on Instagram and Threads and Facebook at Ancient History Fangirl. And we're the same on TikTok. We're not really on Twitter much. It's updates only, but that is at Ancient Hist Fan. And we will see you when we see you.
Greenlight helps kids learn about money by actually using it. It's a debit card and money app that teaches kids to earn, save, and spend in real life, not just swipe and hope for the best. Learning happens naturally, in the moment. Parents can set limits, see real-time spending, and guide better habits all in one place, without constant check-ins or cash runs. Don't wait. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/trygreenlight.